The Traveller's League Book 1 The Timepiece, written by Nick Goss. The Labyrinth. Crossing over to another world had no effect on Chase's determination to overpower Hoops and steal the timepiece. Braxo had full control of the teenager's body and was no stranger to magic. Materializing on the sandstone floor, Hoops and Chase continued to wrestle, but Chase overpowered him. There wasn't a whole lot Hoops could do. He was only 10 years old, fighting a young adult man, and the 2 months of karate lessons he'd taken a year ago would do nothing to help him fend off his enemy. So, Hoops wriggled and thrashed like a wild animal. He was afraid for his life, and he went wild. Chase had a hard time holding on to him, so he kept a grip on the cloak with one hand while reaching for the timepiece with the other. The black eyes still hummed with the anger and dark magic. "Give it to me! It belongs to me! You cannot escape!" The eyes were terrifying up close. Hoops did everything he could to avoid looking at them. Chase suddenly gripped the cloak with his other hand, this time at the collar just below Hoops's neck. The wild animal in Hoops' 10-year-old brain went crazy. Hoops opened his mouth, tucked his chin, and bit into Chase's hand as hard as he could. He bit all the way down until his teeth scraped bone. He tightened his jaws to make his teeth come together, and they almost did. Chase screamed and let go of the cloak, but Hoops didn't let up his assault. Crazed with fear, he clawed at the teenager's face like an eagle, trying to sink its talons into a snake. His fingers plunged into the black eyes, and he screamed at them in anger. Chase stumbled backwards, his hands bleeding, his eyes shut. Hoops launched his one last counterattack and kicked his leather boot between the teenager's legs with all his remaining strength. He knew his foot had found its target when Chase's body instantly dropped to the ground on his knees. Hoops had only a moment to get away. Not knowing where he was or caring which direction to go, he slipped the hood of his cloak over his head and ran for his life. He heard Braxo's enraged scream fill the air behind him. Hoops ran down a hallway with no ceiling. The walls and floors were made of giant sandstone blocks. The walls were at least 20 feet high, offering no chance of climbing out. The hallway came to an end, allowing Hoops to go either left or right. He chose to go left, making a mental note of his turn. The end of this new hallway glowed from the light of what Hoops thought may be a portal, a shimmering green oval disc in the wall about 5 feet high. Looking back over his shoulder, he saw Chase round the corner, his black eyes glowing. Pulling the cloak close to him, Hoops pressed himself against the wall. Chase couldn't see the boy, neither could Braxo, so he spun around and slowly moved towards the other end of this hallway, to the right. "You're here, boy! I know you still have it. Give it to me. I will never stop. I will always find you." The opposite hallway, the one leading to the right, ended with a red portal embedded in the wall. Scouring the walls and the floor for any sign of the invisible boy, Chase had made only a few steps towards the red portal when a monstrous roar boomed into the hallway. "Trespassers!" Hoops was frozen with fear, but the bellowing voice didn't seem to affect Chase at all while Braxo had control of him. Through the red glowing portal stepped an enormous creature. It had the body of a muscular man completely covered in black hair, but its feet were hooves, and it had the head of a terrifying bull. Broad leather straps crisscrossed its wide chest and connected to an equally wide belt. Its horns were black, sharp and vicious. Hoops had read about this monster in a mythology book, a minotaur. "Trespasser!" It bellowed again when its eyes fell on the teenager. When Chase turned to run from the beast, Hoops saw that his eyes no longer glowed black. Chase was himself again, and he was panicked, dazed, and beside himself with confusion and fear. His head turned this way and that, up and down, trying to make sense of his surroundings, while his legs took him down the hallway towards the green portal. Hoops didn't move or reveal himself. He just watched. The Minotaur charged at Chase, and in 4 or 5 wide, easy strides caught up to him. The thick, hairy hand seized the teenager and dragged him through the green portal. Hoops followed with his hood still over his head. When he emerged from the portal, he watched the Minotaur take a right at a junction up ahead. When Hoops got to the junction, he saw that the long hallway to the left ended with a white portal embedded in the wall. If he were to continue straight ahead and not turn to the right or left, the hallway ended in a dazzling blue portal. But the creature took a right, so he followed. At the end of this hallway stood the Minotaur. Chase couldn't free himself from its grip. The creature easily lifted the teenager with both arms and slung him into a slowly swirling black portal. Chase's screams suddenly stopped a moment later. After he had disappeared into the black void, tiptoeing closer, Hoops could smell sulphur and rotting meat. He heard moans of agony and distant screams coming from the portal. He felt sick inside, thinking of the suffering of the souls trapped inside. He imagined that hell must be something like this, and he had no interest in learning more about what may await him through that black hole in the wall. The Minotaur turned around and slowly strode past the invisible boy, down the hall, and taking a right slipped through the blue portal. Hoop softly ran after him, making as little noise as his leather boots would allow. Slipping through the blue portal, the world seemed to change. He stepped out to the other side into a rocky, sandy ground. The night sky above was full of brilliant, colourful stars, like what he had seen in Torpil. He counted 5 dazzling moons of different sizes, each one dominating its own portion of the stellar dome above. The Minotaur was nowhere to be found, so Hoop slipped off the hood of the cloak to get a clearer view of the world around him and the night sky. He stood in a desert plain. There were no mountains in the distance. There were no plants, trees, bugs, or animals. There was nothing but a desert stuck in time at night. The light from the heavens above illuminated the ground enough for Hoops to notice the hoof prints of the Minotaur leading straight ahead, away from the blue portal. Tracking the beast through the desert sand was easy, so he followed the prints for about 100 yards to where they disappeared over the edge of a cliff. Hoops stood atop a black canyon. At least, he thought it might be a canyon. He couldn't see the other side or the bottom. It was too dark. There was just blackness. This is what the edge of the world must be like. But from the darkness below he could hear the faint moans and screams that had frightened him at the black portal. Stepping backwards away from the cliff's edge, a monstrous voice bellowed from behind him. "Trespasser!" He spun around to see the Minotaur stepping through the portal. Eyes locked on the boy, the beast beat his hoofs into the sand as only a bull can, then charged at Hoops with alarming speed. Hoops grabbed the edges of his hood and whisked it over his head. The bullman slid to a stop, wildly panting, snot oozing from its nose. It turned this way and that, sniffing the air. "I smell you, man-child," it growled. As it followed Hoop's scent, it would take a slow step in his direction. Closer and closer with each step of his hoof. Hoop stepped to his right as lightly and quietly as he could to sneak around the beast. But the monster's nose was keen, and it still moved in Hoops's direction. He knew he'd never make it around the Minotaur if he ran for the portal now. Just then he remembered he had the knife. He slipped it out of his belt and pointed its blue blade at the beast. Nothing. No vibration, no sensation in the stomach. He wouldn't be taking control of this magical creature's mind, which made him think there must be something special about the Minotaur. Still, he knew he was in great danger, and as a last resort he tiptoed back to the cliff's edge. He slipped the hood off his head, but didn't let go of the cloak. "I'm over here, you stinky meat sack," he shouted. The The beast jerked in his direction, bellowed and charged. Its arms were raised, and it had murder in its eyes. Not yet, Hoops told himself. He allowed the distance between him and the mythical beast to close. His knees shook, and he thought that he must be crazy. Still, this was the only chance of escape. Not yet! The creature moved faster, and the closer it got, the more terrifying it looked. Only yards away, Hoops knew the moment was now or never. Now! He slipped the hood over his head and dropped to the ground just as the beast lunged at him. He grabbed his knees and curled up in a tight ball. There wasn't enough ground left for the bulky creature to slow down and turn, and it tumbled over the edge of the cliff. Its roar echoed up from the blackness as it fell further and further down. Eventually, he could no longer hear it, only the moans and screams from the lost souls below. Removing the hood, Hoops walked back to the blue portal and stepped through. It was time to explore the secrets of the Labyrinth.